way to Navarre. About to cross the bridge. We are going to be attempting a shore dive, our last couple shore dives that I've gone on. I don't know about yours, but they are usually not that successful. They are a lot of effort for little reward. So we're going to see if we can kind of change that curse today. Going to a new spot. We actually have all the GPS locations for every single bit of reef structure, so we should have a lot of things in our area, not have to get up in the kayak and paddle around too much, and it should be a very profitable day. Get some good footage and some better fish. Empty cooler going out, and then you better get a shot of me saying full cooler coming back. Alright guys, we've really been trying to decide what we want to do as far as kind of the type of content we want to produce, and we're thinking we're going to go a little bit along the lines of showing you guys how to get into spearfishing without a lot of experience, and then also in this video without a lot of resources. You kind of see there in that first bit I was riding out in my Hobie Compass. All I really have on there is the pedal drive and then a pretty cheap Garmin GPS / fish finder. It's not the greatest, but you know, it really does get the job done. Now you can kind of see we're going after red snapper for today's target, which is not a bad reef fish to go after. They're pretty easy to hunt. The species is not that smart. To be honest with y'all, you really don't have to do a whole lot of hunting techniques as far as hiding and being very cautious, because if you just kind of put a drop to the bottom, at least pretty close to the bottom within about 15-20 feet or so, and then kind of have a non-threatening pose, you'll see that they'll swim right up to you and present you an awesome shot, as the case with some of these larger ones you've seen here. This day was actually a really hard day to get out there and hunt from the kayak or dive off the kayak, just because the current was wild. We ran into some issues where we were pedaling out and we saw a lot of fish come up on the bottom scanner, so decided to hop in and take a drop, and that was our first mistake. We really should have just gone right for the number that we had set up on the GPS unit before we even jumped in the water. Worried about setting the anchor and all that thing. That's really your first thing you want to do when you get a kayak dive, especially if there's pretty much any current whatsoever. You want to get that anchor set and not have to worry about it, so that every time you can kind of come back up, you know exactly where the reef's at based on the relation of where your kayak is actually entered, or paddleboard in some cases. Can see a nice shot right there, a little bit behind the head. Not the greatest one, but nonetheless, not bad for the rough conditions we were going with. My dive times that day were actually maybe about a minute 5 seconds. It was really hard to be able to land on top of the reef with all of that current. Now in these first couple shots, it looks like you might be wondering what on earth is going on with both of our fins in the shot. Actually, what had to happen is every single time I took a drop and came up with a fish, Todd would actually have to snatch me by my weight belt and pretty much swim me back to the kayak while I ethically dispatched the fish, and he was really helping out as far as passing the shaft, and I was just 100% being able to focus on getting that fish off my shaft, ethically dispatched without attracting any sharks or anything like that. No taxman coming in, and then you can kind of see that even with that, it was quite a struggle to actually get us back to the kayak. And then getting them up into the cooler. Once again, if you don't have a nice big fish box and your lid's not staying on that great, if you put a live fish in there, it's gonna go ahead and flip its way off, knock the top off, you're gonna lose your top, everything. No good, especially on a kayak where you have to paddle to chase that thing down. Here's a drop from Todd. That's the anchor line right there, just following it down. We're using about a 3.5 pound grapple anchor that I dropped inside of a pyramid that would actually finally stick. You can see him coming up on a red snapper. We've actually got a review of the gun he's using coming out at some point. We're going to talk about all the Salvimar heroes, what we like about him, what we don't like about him. Awesome gun though. On the way up, this fish actually goes and swims and does a little whirly action all the way around the anchor line, kind of causing a bit of an issue. You see Todd handles that pretty nicely, just diving down right to the fish and untangling it. gets a little bit extra life back in them up here. Really the best thing to do in a situation like this is just go ahead and suck it up. Maybe dispatch your fish, just get them up to the surface as best as you can. So that way you can deal with them on your terms. Always recommend, especially if you don't have a boatie, being able to do it for you. Have yourself a decent enough nice where you can brain that fish as they get to the top. Makes the meat taste a little bit better, just a lot easier. I don't always use a knife. You'll see in a couple shots here, I like to actually use the point of my shaft after I've gotten it looped through the fish. Make sure you're careful too when you got your fingers in those gills. There's a lot of sharp things can really catch you on. This drop was pretty tough. I actually had to swim about 20 feet up current from the kayak to actually make it down. See the fish? You'll kind of see a little bit of the structure on the bottom of this one when I get down there. Whenever I make dives, I like to not look down at the bottom until I'm pretty close there, just to prevent drag, and just kind of helps me relax as I get my breath hold going. See a bunch of amberjacks floating around here. This was actually an awesome reef. If you're part of the Gulf Coast Divers group, you actually have coordinates to this reef. It's that the closest or furthest north piece of structure there is. There's a nice little snapper right there. Didn't even have to go all the way to the bottom. Usually we do prefer to hit the sand on every dive, but sometimes it's really not needed. You see a nice shot presented to you as you're getting down there. Remember, those fish are pretty curious. They will swim up to you and let you nail them. There's Todd playing with his camera, giving you a nice angle of that shot. I was actually so excited about this dive. This is actually my personal best mangrove, and it's not a stud, but he's probably about an 18-inch fish. Not too bad. And those, to me, are like one of the best tasting fishes we have out here. You'll notice that whenever I pull the fish up to me, I like to just very, very slowly pull the line and just act as calm as possible so you can grab that fish without thrashing around, getting yourself cut up, maybe having them tear off the line if you don't have the best shot. Mangroves are really notorious for doing that. You can see I'm just kind of admiring this fish as I got him up to me. It's a decent fish. This was a great reef to get those off of. All these Navarre reefs, all these pyramids have tons and tons and tons of mangroves on them. And they're all pretty decent mangroves, not those 12 inches you usually see. They're all about 16 to 20 inches, so pretty solid fish. There's something just about it when you get that awesome fish that's a personal best to you. It might not be the biggest one, but you're just so psyched when you actually land him, got him up and almost into the cooler. At least got him brained so you know he's not gonna be flopping around. Here's another shot, making sure he's completely dead before he goes in the cooler. Usually when they open their mouths like that, you know that's kind of the nerves going off and they are actually dead. You might have to twist your knife around, work it until you hit the brain. But nonetheless, there we go. If you're wondering what that little silver PVC pipe on my belt is, that's a flasher that we usually drop. You just kind of drop it, it floats extremely slow to the bottom, and the fish just cannot leave it alone. They completely swarm it. The amberjack in particular actually almost grab it and try to run away with it until they realize that it's just a piece of plastic. Unfortunately, the current today was just way too ripping to be able to be playing with the flasher like that. And we didn't even really need it for those big snapper to come in. Here he goes in the cooler. I absolutely love this gun that I'm using. It took me a really long time to figure out exactly which gun I liked as far as being able to shoot it correctly. You know, a nice handle and everything like that, but I think I got it really nailed. This is the Bluegreen Falcon in a 100 centimeter size, which is actually runs a little bit larger than most other standard 100 guns. Got that set up with the Meandros reel. I think it's the number 3. It has about 150 plus feet of Dyneema. That's what we like to use down here, especially when things get caught in the pyramids. That Dyneema is a little bit more resilient. On this dive, I'm just kind of checking out all the fish hanging around. Lots of okay sized amberjacks on this pyramid. I don't think there are any legal ones, but there's my fish. Got them picked out, pulling them up to the surface again. This blue-green falcon is just so freaking accurate. You can kind of see the handle right there. It's got that nice kind of custom grip straight from the factory. This is kind of in between a mass-produced gun and a purely custom gun. They do like a small batch thing. It's a monoblock carbon fiber, and that thing is just a freaking laser. Even at a double wrap, I want to say at the end of that wrap, you can still hit a fish right where you want to. And I always like to use high visibility reel line just so you can see exactly where you need to trace it. Man, this snapper just looks so pretty coming up from the blue. You can see this guy, I barely hit him in the head. He turned away right as I pulled the trigger. Just barely went through his gills. Here's a third person view of kind of getting him into the boat or into the kayak. I think this was the largest snapper of the day right here. Hit him and he immediately took off, took a good bit of line out. Wasn't able to pull him up in one dive. Here you can see once again the current is just absolutely ripping. Todd's got me by the belt, pulled me back, making sure that we're on top of the kayak. We'll see you for the after dive report in just a couple seconds. Cooler went out, full cooler came back. Got a 2-man limit for snapper and the mangroves. Let's see what we got.
Still got the hook in its mouth. Is that the one? Oh, it's the other one. It's the other one still got the hook in its mouth.
See, the trick with these snappers is sometimes they don't want to eat the bait, so you gotta give them a meal they can't refuse.
Those are 4 solid snapper. And then your PB mangrove.
By the way, that first snapper bit the shit out of my finger. I retardedly stuck my hand in its mouth. It bit the crap out of it.
Look at that. That is a solid freaking mangrove. Man, that's a solid mangrove. And then we have his baby brother.
Here, let me make it look nice and take
And let me take the basket off of it.
Yeah. Massive. Monster mangrove. I wish we had the scale. I bet you he's about 8 pounds or so. Oh, dude, quick,
You fucking little bitch lizard.
Basket off.